Just because a movie bombs at the box office does not make it a bad movie. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris and welcome back to another video. So today I've got my top 10 favorite movies that bombed at the box office. Now, what defines a box office bomb? Simply put, it's a movie that fails to break even by a large amount. I just sifted through a list of the biggest box office bombs and picked out the 10 that I like the best. Before I get into this though, be sure to hit that like button and comment down below your favorite movie that bombed at the box office. Subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. And go check out my Patreon for weekly commentary tracks and exclusive content. Your support over there truly does mean the world. You can watch movies and shows with me. Alright, so kickstarting this list at number 10 is Guy Ritchie's The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I didn't even see this movie in theaters, so I contributed to its flopping. But I rented the film from Redbox back in the day and watched it with my parents, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. You've got Guy Ritchie directing a spy action thriller starring Henry Cavill and Armie Hammer. I don't remember the ins and outs of this movie, but I do remember the first 30 or so minutes having a really riveting chase sequence. It was a fun spy film in the light of something like a James Bond or Mission Impossible, and my big takeaway from this film is that at the time, I would have been a fan of Henry Cavill going on to play James Bond. I think that ship has sailed in terms of him ever actually playing Bond. I would be a proponent of it, but regardless, Man from U.N.C.L.E. was a fun enough time. It's also based on an old TV show from back in the day, so it's technically a remake of that. But the movie had a budget of $75 million and only made $109 million, with projected losses of $80 million total. It was a fun movie, but not one I deemed worthy to see in the theaters at times, so I kind of understand why it flopped. At number 9 on my list, I've got Disney's Haunted Mansion. Not to be confused with the Eddie Murphy film from the early 2000s, this is the movie that came out last year. I'm a huge fan of Walt Disney World, and Magic Kingdom is the classic theme park, and the Haunted Mansion is a staple attraction from that park. Well, this movie brings the story from the ride to life and expands on the actual lore of the Haunted Mansion, surprisingly enough, and it's got a star-studded cast from Danny DeVito to Owen Wilson, Jamie Lee Curtis to Lakeith Stanfield, even Rosario Dawson, Jared Leto's in the film, and even Winona Ryder makes a tiny cameo. So it's a star-studded cast, and it's a family fun time. Like, it's a movie that if I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, I would enjoy watching around Halloween time because it's got elements of horror, but it's not full-blown terrifying like The Conjuring, for example. It's a light-hearted, spooky movie that could be a gateway for someone to continue to watch horror films, like a gateway into horror, and it brings to life some of the best elements of the Disney ride. By no means is the movie great. In fact, it's more forgettable than I would like to admit. I haven't really thought about it since last summer, but I could see myself revisiting it one day. Lakeith Stanfield gave a surprisingly great performance, but if we're talking box office numbers here, the movie had a $150 million budget, which is just way too high for a film of this scale, and it only pulled in $117 million, and if you run the math, it has estimated losses of $117 million, so it was a big time bomb for Disney. And speaking of Disney, number 8 on my list is going to be the recently released Wish, which came out last year. I saw this one in theaters, and I enjoyed my time with it. It had a banger of a soundtrack, and some of the visuals were really stunning, but the movie itself hasn't really stuck with me all that much. The movie ended up bringing in $255 million worldwide, but it had an estimated budget of anywhere from $175 million to $200 million, so the estimated losses are around $131 million. I appreciate Wish as it pays homage to Disney animation as a whole, from its inception to the modern day flicks. It's by no means a great Disney movie, but it was fine enough. I think the music and animation make up for a lot, but in all honesty, the bottom entries on this top 10 list are movies that I'm fine on, but I understand why they didn't perform that well at the box office. At number 7 on my list is John Carter. I remember when this movie came out in theaters, I was stoked. I thought it looked like such a cool sci-fi concept, and I went with a buddy of mine at the time and my mom, and I was just so over the moon. I was like 13 years old. I was like, yes! It stars Taylor Kitsch, who proved to be not a box office draw, but hey, he was still on Friday Night Lights, so that's a win. I revisited this movie in like 2020 for the first time in years, and I appreciate the ideas here. Visually, the movie looks great. There's some cool concepts and action sequences as well, but for whatever reason, the movie just didn't sell to audiences, and that's a problem because it had a $263 million budget. Now, it made $284 million worldwide, but the estimated losses are anywhere from $112 million to $200 million. In fact, John Carter infamously is one of the biggest box office bombs ever made, which is a shame because I don't think the movie's all that bad. I enjoy it, and I even have some nostalgia for it, though I rarely find myself thinking about it or wanting to revisit it. At number 6 on my list is The Last Duel, directed by Ridley Scott, starring Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. I'm stunned that this movie underperformed so hard. Adam Driver's also in the film, and it does a really unique thing of telling the story from various perspectives. Like, we'll watch a series of events unfold through one character's point of view, and then we'll have another chapter that will show us everything we just watched entirely differently, as it's through a different character's eyes. It had a budget of $100 million, but it only made $30 million at the box office, making for estimated losses of $99 million. And it's a shame because it's an original story. It's not like it's a sequel or a prequel. Starring Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, two of the biggest movie stars of our time. Directed by Ridley Scott, who's done Blade Runner, Alien, and Gladiator. At the time of its release in October of 2021 though, it just didn't stick for whatever reason. I do believe audiences were skeptical about going to the theaters around this time anyway, but I think the reason I'm the most shocked that it bombed is it stars Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Household names. At number 5 on my list is Sahara, a movie that I grew up watching starring Matthew McConaughey, Penelope Cruz, and Steve Zahn. It's an action-adventure film that had a massive budget of $160 million, and the movie only made $119 worldwide. It was estimated to lose $78 million, and it's a shame because it's a fun movie. It also stars William H. Macy and Rainn Wilson, who plays Dwight Schrute on The Office. Now, I rewatched some scenes from this movie fairly recently. It's definitely cheesy. The intro credits alone take up like 5 minutes of the movie for some reason, and I don't know if Penelope Cruz and McConaughey had the greatest chemistry, to be honest, but I still remember watching this movie as a 5-year-old thinking it was the coolest shit ever. At number 4 on my list is Onward, the last true winner for Pixar in my opinion. I'm well aware that's a hot take, but the brotherhood story in this film really pulled on my heartstrings and had me crying in the theater when I watched it. It came out the week before COVID-19 though, which is the reason it flopped so hard, I think. It had a reported budget of anywhere from $175 million to $200 million, and it ended up pulling in $142 million worldwide, but the losses were about $130 million. The timing with this one's just super unfortunate because the week after it released, the world shut down. It has all the makings of a classic Pixar film, and to me, it's arguably one of their top 10 movies, but the timing just wasn't right for this one. At number 3 on my list is going to be James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, which came out in 2021. Again, this came out at a time where people were skeptical about going back to the theaters, and this movie dropped on HBO Max the same day as hitting theaters, which didn't help its case. But the movie had a whopping $185 million budget, and it only made $167 million worldwide. Estimated losses were around $120 million, and it's a shame because this was a DCEU movie, and it was the best of the bunch. We had 2016 Suicide Squad, which was a dumpster fire. This rode all the wrongs of that movie and was a great standalone story that took risks. It killed off a whole squad of people in the beginning of the film, and then that made way for our actual Suicide Squad. You've got Margot Robbie getting her best performance as Harley Quinn, but above all else, we've got Peacemaker played by John Cena here. And once you watch the Peacemaker series, it adds even more depth to his character. He's such a complex anti-hero, and the fight between him and Rick Flag is a really well-shot hand-to-hand combat comic book movie fight scene. The Suicide Squad's a bloody fun time. It's over the top. It's got James Gunn's direction at its core, and it's a really great film. One of the better superhero films in recent years, especially from DC, and it's a damn shame it flopped at the box office. I bet if it didn't go to HBO Max on the same day, its numbers would have been a lot higher, but unfortunately, I feel like the public at this point in time was just so disconnected from the DCEU that it really wasn't willing to go spend money on a ticket, especially after the travesty that was 2016 Suicide Squad. My runner-up is West Side Story from 2021. This is the Steven Spielberg directed musical. It's a remake of the beloved Best Picture winner from the 1960s, and the movie had a budget of $100 million, but only made $76 million worldwide. Estimated losses were around $104 million. And this one really breaks my heart because this is one of the best films I've seen this decade. West Side Story, arguably my favorite musical story. I listen to the soundtrack from both the original film and this remake all the time in my car, and this is a beautifully tragic story. Steven Spielberg's direction shines here. He shows he's still got it all these years later. And this movie really put Rachel Zegler on the map. She shines as Maria. Ariana DeBose won an Oscar for her supporting role. And Mike Fice knocks it out of the park as Riff. This is one of those movies we'll look back on years from now and be like, wow, that movie made stars out of multiple actors. It's a gorgeous looking movie with an all-time soundtrack. The dance choreography really blows my mind, like the amount of hours of work put in to pull some of these these sequences off, and Spielberg's direction masterfully brings it all together to deliver one of the best musicals I've ever seen. But my favorite movie that bombed at the box office is Christopher Nolan's Tenet. The movie came out in 2020 and was like the first big release to hit theaters post-pandemic, even though we were still in the middle of the pandemic. It had a $200 million budget, and it still managed to make $363 million worldwide. But it still lost anywhere from $50 million to $100 million, technically classifying it as a bomb. But Tenet was an experience. I remember being over the moon excited to go to the theater, and I saw it that first night and went back the next night and watched it again. The highway sequence on the big screen is burned into my brain forever, and this movie just goes to show how Nolan is a mastermind. By the end of the movie, all the questions I had were answered. Some of the action here is just mind-boggling how they pulled it off. Like, the third act of this movie is insane. Christopher Nolan's attention to every little detail blows my mind, and this is one of those movies where you can't look away, you can't blink, you can't check your phone. You gotta be locked in from beginning to end or you'll miss it. It truly is a puzzle, and I find John David Washington's protagonist to be a compelling lead, but Robert Pattinson is the real scene stealer here. He's so cool in this movie, one of the coolest movie characters I might have seen in recent years, and Tenet rules. I know a lot of people dismiss it as one of Nolan's worst films, but to me, it's a gem. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Ludwig Göransson's score. I listen to that thing all the time. The track Posterity, it's like almost 15 minutes long. That'll get you through any workout, any editing session, anything in life. You put that on, you'll want to run through a damn brick wall. Nolan crushed it. The man doesn't miss, and this is further proof of that. Plus, if this movie came out under normal circumstances, I don't think I'd be talking about it in this video because it would have lit it up at the box office, in my opinion. But those are my top 10 favorite box office bombs. Let me know yours in the comments down below, and be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. But that'll do it. Thank you guys, as always, for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.